They say you can't predict evil, but what happens when it comes from the people closest to you? Skyler's tragic death wasn't just a crime. It was an act of pure, calculated malice. Her so-called friends didn't just betray her. They planned her death, and their cruelty was beyond anything anyone could imagine. And this crime? It was so brutal that even detectives were left speechless. Keep watching. You don't want to miss the shocking truth. Nestled in the heart of West Virginia, Morgantown is a town that seems to have it all. A town so picturesque, quiet streets lined with trees, the sun gently filtering through the branches. It's a place where life moves at a comfortable pace, where everyone knows each other, and you can still see families walking down Main Street on a Sunday afternoon, shopping, chatting, living the American dream. The charm of Morgantown isn't just in its beauty, it's in its spirit. But what most people don't know is that beneath the surface of this lively college town lies something darker, something far more sinister. It's a place that on the outside feels safe, welcoming, even idyllic. But there's a darkness here, one that hides in plain sight, ready to shake this community to its very foundation. And it's about to unravel in a way that no one could have predicted. A brutal crime so horrific that even the most seasoned detectives in the area would be left speechless, unable to fathom what had just unfolded. And it all starts with a seemingly ordinary family, a family who thought they knew their town, their community. But behind the town's peaceful charm, a crime so brutal and twisted was about to unfold, one that no one would ever see coming. The truth would soon be revealed, and Morgantown, this town so full of life, would never be the same again. And as we peel back the layers piece by piece, you'll see just how deep this darkness goes. A brutal crime, the likes of which even detectives had never seen, was about to shock this town to its core. Stay with me. You won't want to miss what happens next. But as we dig deeper into this case, there's a lesson we can all take away in the end, something that could save a life. Before we dive deeper into this shocking story, make sure to hit subscribe. Because if you believe that no one should ever have to suffer the darkness that hides behind smiles, then you're on the right side of this story. If you're not a part of this twisted cycle, hit that subscribe button now. Only those who stand for justice won't hesitate. Skyler Nie was the kind of person everyone loved. A 16-year-old girl full of life, with an infectious smile and a spirit that seemed to brighten every room she entered. Straight-A student, part-time job at Wendy's, and known for her unwavering kindness. She wasn't just book smart, she was the kind of person who lit up the world with her energy. Her parents, Mary and Dave Nie, thought the world of her. She was their only child, and they made no secret of their love for her. Her father, Dave, a big, burly man who worked hard every day, would often tell stories of how he spoiled his daughter. And Skyler, well, she was more than just spoiled. She was adored. Skyler's relationship with her family was her anchor. She was fiercely loyal to them, always there to make them laugh or offer a word of encouragement. But her kindness didn't just stop at home. At school, Skyler was well-liked by her peers, loved for her warm nature and generosity. She had a circle of friends, girls she laughed with, girls she confided in, girls she trusted. But life, as it often does, has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. Skyler's friendships weren't as solid as they appeared. What looked like a simple teenage drama, some petty fights, a few misunderstandings, was slowly growing into something darker. Her best friends, Sheila and Rachel, had started to push her away. At first it was subtle, the snide remarks, the inside jokes Skyler wasn't included in, the way they started showing up at school in matching outfits without telling her beforehand. Skyler noticed it, and it hurt. But she didn't say anything. She told herself, it's just a phase, things will get better. But they didn't. The little things began to build up, a distance forming where there used to be closeness. Skyler couldn't escape the feeling that something was wrong. But what Skyler didn't know was this was just the beginning. Her friends, once so close, once so loyal, were growing colder, more distant, more manipulative. And Skyler, for all her strength and charm, was about to learn the most devastating lesson of all. As Skyler's life seemed to spiral out of control, the cruel manipulation from those she trusted most was just beginning. But how far would they go to push her away? If you believe Skylar deserved better, if you feel that no one should ever be treated like this, hit like and show the world that we won't stand for betrayal and cruelty. Let's send a message loud and clear. Skylar's world had always been full of laughter, friendship, and promises of loyalty. At least that's how it seemed at first. But slowly, things began to change. Sheila and Rachel, the girl she had trusted the most, started acting differently. At first, it was small things, a joke at Skylar's expense, an inside joke she wasn't included in, a picture posted on social media where Skylar was barely visible, pushed to the background while Sheila and Rachel took center stage. And Skylar, being the kind-hearted soul she was, brushed it off. It didn't feel right, but she told herself, they're just being teenagers, it'll blow over. But it didn't. The moments of exclusion started to pile up, and with each new slight, Skylar felt the growing distance between them. The laughter they once shared now seemed forced, and the conversations, once filled with excitement, began to turn cold. Skylar's confidence, her easy smile, began to fade like the spark was slowly dimming. She wasn't just being left out anymore. She was being isolated. And worse yet, her friends, her best friends, weren't the same girls she had laughed with, cried with, and trusted. The jealousy and resentment that had been quietly festering under the surface now became painfully obvious. They wanted control. They wanted power over Skylar. And they were going to get it. What Skylar didn't know, though, was that Sheila and Rachel were talking about her behind her back. They had grown tired of her loyalty, tired of her kindness. They didn't want to be friends anymore. They wanted to erase her. Their behavior was no longer just mean or petty. It was calculated. It was cruel. And it was leading somewhere Skylar couldn't even begin to imagine. What looked like normal teenage drama was actually a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. Skylar's trust in them was still strong, but the walls around her were closing in fast. And soon those walls would crush her. As their toxic friendship grew more manipulative and toxic, it became clear that something darker was at play. The final act of betrayal was already in motion. The last straw was a decision that would seal Skylar's fate and change everything. But how far would they go to make her disappear? Think about how easily trust can be shattered. Do you think these manipulative friends should have faced the consequences of their actions sooner? Share this video with your friends and remind them true friendships should never turn toxic. Share it to raise awareness. Share it to warn others. It was a warm summer night, nothing out of the ordinary. Skylar had just finished another shift at Wendy's. She walked into her family's apartment, exhausted. The night was winding down, and she had planned on just getting some rest. She smiled at her parents, told them she loved them, and headed to her room, eager to sleep off the long day. But little did she know, the darkness outside was already pulling her in. Just as she got comfortable, her phone buzzed. It was a text from Rachel. "Hey, want to sneak out tonight? Just us three? Like old times." Skylar hesitated. She was tired. She was hurt by the way things had been lately, excluded, forgotten. But her friends were asking. The two girls she trusted more than anything. They had been her best friends for years. Maybe, just maybe, this was their way of showing her they still cared. And so she replied, "Okay, fine, let's do it." What should have been a fun night out with friends was actually a carefully laid trap. She didn't know it yet, but the decision she made in that moment would change everything. Skylar climbed out of her bedroom window, just like she'd done before when they all snuck out together. She didn't even think twice as she grabbed the bench to prop up her window, just as Sheila had instructed her. It was a routine they'd done countless times, and tonight seemed no different. But Sheila and Rachel knew exactly what they were doing. They had worked on this plan for days, maybe weeks, manipulating Skylar's emotions, playing on her loneliness and vulnerability. Sheila texted her again, "Meet us a block down the street. We'll pick you up." Skylar thought it was normal. She thought this was just a typical night out. But what she didn't realize was that her so-called friends had planned something far darker. Her emotional trust, her desire for normalcy, her need to feel accepted, these were the ropes that had tied her to their manipulation. As Skylar made her way down to meet them, she was completely unaware of the horror that was about to unfold. Skylar thought she was simply going out with friends. She had no idea what was waiting for her in the darkness. As Skylar's life began to spiral out of control, it's important to notice the signs of manipulation in friendships. Sometimes the people closest to us can become the most dangerous. If you ever notice your child or loved one being pushed away, isolated, or manipulated by someone they trust, that's a red flag. Keep watching, because there's a much bigger lesson coming up that could make a difference in how we protect our loved ones. Skylar had no idea what was coming, but comment below if you believe this betrayal could have been stopped. I read and replied to every comment, so let's talk about how we can prevent this from ever happening again. Skylar, feeling the warm summer air against her skin, slid into the backseat of the car without a second thought. Sheila was driving. Rachel was sitting in the passenger seat, both of them chatting lightly, trying to keep things casual, pretending everything was normal. Skylar smiled, still unaware of the darkness that had already consumed the night. She thought this was just another late-night hangout, another escape from the tension at home, but she had no idea what was really happening. As Sheila drove, they made their way out of Morgantown, heading toward a road she didn't recognize. She turned onto a dark, secluded path, far from the town's safe, familiar streets. The trees on both sides of the road created a tunnel, the shadows playing tricks on Skylar's mind as the car rumbled over the uneven dirt. In the blink of an eye, Skylar's world turned into a living nightmare. What she thought was just another drive to a quiet spot suddenly felt off. Wrong. Her heart skipped a beat. Her gut told her something was wrong. But before she could even voice her concern, Sheila slammed on the brakes. The car stopped. Skylar's breath caught in her throat. She had no idea where she was or why they had stopped. Her body tensed as she glanced around, seeing nothing but dark woods. Rachel and Sheila exchanged looks, a look that Skylar couldn't quite read. And before she could ask, Sheila turned off the engine. The air inside the car felt suddenly cold, silent. Then, without warning, Sheila turned to Skylar and said something that made her blood run cold. "It's time." Time for what? Skylar's heart pounded in her chest. She opened her mouth to speak, but before she could, Rachel, who had been quietly sitting beside her, shifted quickly and pinned Skylar's arms down. Skylar struggled, confusion flooding her. What was happening? She tried to scream, but Sheila was already on top of her, holding her down. The attack wasn't over yet. It was only just beginning, and Skylar had no chance to fight back. If you believe that justice should always be served, subscribe to this channel for more shocking true crime stories. Don't let these acts go unpunished. Keep standing against injustice, Dorothy. Skylar, her body weak from the initial attack, tried to crawl away, her breath ragged, chest heaving with fear. But they didn't let her. Sheila and Rachel, cold and unfeeling, held her down with ease. Skylar fought back, every ounce of her willpower screaming to survive, to escape. But the two girls were stronger, more ruthless. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was something much worse, something no one would ever be prepared for. Sheila looked at Skylar with cold eyes, her face blank. No remorse, no regret. Rachel stood next to her, a twisted smirk curling on her lips. They didn't see a friend in Skylar anymore. They didn't even see a person. They saw a thing, a victim, a target, and Skylar was helpless. As Skylar tried to scream, Sheila placed her hand over her mouth, silencing her. Her grip was firm, suffocating, almost comforting in its coldness. Skylar's eyes filled with terror as she looked up at her attackers, her former friends. Rachel, laughing softly, reached for a knife, pulling it from the pocket of her sweatshirt. The blade gleamed in the pale moonlight, reflecting Skylar's fear. "Ready?" Sheila whispered, almost like she was asking about some sick game they were playing. Rachel, still grinning, nodded. "Let's finish it," she said. And with that, the brutality resumed. Skylar struggled, but it was hopeless. She could barely feel her body anymore. Everything was numb. Pain was becoming distant, fading. Her last thoughts were of her family, of her life, a life that she never imagined would end this way. And still, Sheila and Rachel showed no sign of stopping, no sign of human emotion, as they continued. They didn't just hurt Skylar, they broke her, crushed her spirit, reduced her to something less than human. What came next was far worse than anyone could have imagined. If you're sickened by what you've heard so far, show your support for justice by hitting like. Like this video if you think true crime stories like Skyler's deserve to be heard, so the world knows how real and brutal the consequences of betrayal can be. The discovery came in the most unexpected way. A group of young boys, just out for a quiet afternoon in the woods, wandered down a familiar path, a route they often took to escape the heat of summer days. But this time, their usual routine led them to something far more sinister. As they walked deeper into the forest, they noticed something strange, something out of place, a body partially covered by a pile of sticks and rocks. The boys froze, staring in disbelief. One of them, a bit braver than the rest, approached cautiously. As he moved the debris, the truth became clear. Skyler Nie, a young girl whose face was known and loved by many in Morgantown, was lying there, lifeless, discarded as if she meant nothing at all. The scene was chilling, almost unreal. The boys immediately called the authorities, their voices shaking with fear as they explained what they'd found. But even the seasoned officers who arrived on the scene were taken aback. They had seen their share of crime, but the brutality of this was unlike anything they'd encountered before. Skyler's body wasn't just left behind, it was treated with an unsettling, callous disregard. Her body had been disposed of so carelessly, it felt almost like a twisted message, something meant to humiliate her, to erase her completely. The placement, the lack of care, this wasn't the work of a random attacker. It was deliberate. Skyler had been abandoned in a place where no one would easily find her, left in the dirt, in the wilderness, away from the people who once cared for her. And the most disturbing part? There were no signs of immediate panic or remorse from her attackers. It was as if they had prepared for this moment. The calmness of the crime was sickening. The discovery wasn't just physical. It would uncover a chilling chain of events no one could have predicted. As the police began their investigation, they quickly realized this wasn't just a case of a missing teenager anymore. No, this was something much darker, much deeper. The clues left behind, the manner in which Skyler had been discarded. It painted a terrifying picture of betrayal and malice. But the real shock came when the investigators dug deeper. They weren't just investigating a murder. They were uncovering a story of betrayal, manipulation, and utter cruelty. Skyler's story shows us how quickly things can go wrong when someone's trust is abused. One of the key things we can do is make sure our children understand boundaries and that their no should always be respected. Keep watching, because the full lesson on how we can truly protect our children and loved ones is coming up, and it's something every parent needs to know. Would you want to know the truth? Would you want the killers to face what they've done? Share this video with someone who needs to know the truth about what happened to Skyler and help expose this darkness. As the investigation into Skyler's murder ramped up, the police knew they had to look beyond the physical evidence. They needed to understand the psychology of the crime. Their first step, the digital trail left behind. In this age of technology, everything leaves a trace, and Sheila and Rachel had left a trail wide enough for the detectives to follow. Text, social media posts, Snapchats. Every message, every conversation, though seemingly ordinary, was a window into their minds. But as investigators sifted through the digital chaos, a chilling truth began to emerge. The text messages weren't just evidence. They were a confession in disguise. Among the thousands of messages exchanged between Sheila, Rachel, and Skyler, there was one that stood out, a message from Sheila that was sent during the time of the attack. The message read, "It's done, no turning back." To anyone else, it may have seemed like just another text, but to the detectives, it was a smoking gun. Sheila wasn't just confirming an action. She was confessing. In real time, she was documenting the horror she had just participated in. And yet, this wasn't the only incriminating text. There were others, messages about their plan, about the location, about the lies they told Skyler to get her to trust them. Every text, every digital footprint revealed the extent of their manipulation and the coldness of their intentions. But what shook the investigators the most wasn't just the content of the messages, it was the sheer indifference behind them. Sheila and Rachel didn't seem to feel any remorse, any guilt. They were casual. They were laughing, talking about how everything had gone exactly as planned. As the detectives pieced together the final details, one chilling fact became clear. This was premeditated. Skyler's murder wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act. It was calculated, it was cold, and it had been in the works for months. But just when the investigators thought they were getting close, when they were certain they had their evidence, something unexpected happened. A new lead came in. A witness came forward with a crucial piece of information. This new revelation would change everything. And as the detectives followed the fresh trail, they began to realize they were closer to unraveling the truth. The truth always comes to light, even through the smallest details. Comment below if you believe the digital trail these killers left behind was the key to solving this crime. I read and replied to every comment. So let's talk about how justice was finally served. The courtroom was a stark contrast to the brutality of the crime. Cold, formal. But for Skyler's family, it felt like a battlefield. Every day was a battle for justice, for closure, for the truth to finally be heard. Skyler's parents, Mary and Dave, sat quietly at the back, their hearts heavy with grief. The reality had set in. Their daughter's life had been taken in the most unimaginable way, and now they were face to face with the two people who had stolen her from them. They were just 16-year-old girls, but in that courtroom they stood accused of something far darker than anyone could have imagined. The courtroom wasn't just a place for justice, it became a battleground for their lives, and every word spoken was a battle. Every argument was a fight for answers. The pain in the air was palpable, as the truth about Skyler's death slowly began to unfold before a jury that had to weigh the evidence, the brutality, and the cold indifference of the two defendants. As the trial progressed, something disturbing became clear. Sheila and Rachel, two young girls who had once been Skyler's closest friends, showed no remorse for what they had done. Instead, they deflected, lied, and pointed fingers. Rachel tried to claim that she had no part in the killing, that Sheila was the mastermind, though no one bought it. Sheila, on the other hand, remained eerily calm, never once showing the slightest sign of guilt or sorrow. The trial was a psychological war. The two girls, whose actions were so callous, seemed to think that the court was their stage, that they could manipulate the story in their favor. But every time they tried to deflect the blame, Skyler's parents, their grief written in their faces, reminded the court of the brutal truth. Their daughter was gone, and no amount of lies or manipulation could ever bring her back. And then came the moment that shocked everyone in the courtroom. Sheila, sitting there with her arms crossed, barely looked up as the prosecutor presented a chilling piece of evidence. A message. A text Sheila had sent just before the murder. The words she sent to Rachel still echoed in the room. "Let's make this quick. No one will ever know." The courtroom went silent, and in that moment Sheila's indifference became undeniable. As the jury deliberates, the ultimate question remains. Will they ever be free, or will justice finally be served? What do you think? Did Sheila and Rachel deserve the full extent of the law? Subscribe to follow the twists and turns of this case until the very end, because no matter what, justice must be done. The courtroom had been quiet for what felt like an eternity. The weight of the moment, the weight of the decisions that would follow, hung heavy in the air. Skyler's parents sat, bracing themselves. They had fought so hard for justice, but they knew that no matter what happened in that courtroom today, it would never bring their daughter back. The judge, his face somber, looked over the room. The families, the lawyers, the jurors, everyone's eyes were locked on him. After weeks of testimony, cross-examinations, and emotional outbursts, the time had come. The verdict. In the end, the sentence couldn't undo what had been done, but it offered some closure. The judge stood, his voice grave as he addressed the court. "Sheila, you have shown no remorse for your actions. Your complete disregard for life and the way you betrayed someone who trusted you will haunt not only Skyler's family, but the community forever. You are sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole in 228. Skylar's parents exchanged a glance. This was the life sentence they had hoped for. But the possibility of parole? That was the part that cut them deep. Could someone who did something so heinous ever truly be rehabilitated? Then the judge turned to Rachel. She sat there, barely showing any emotion. Her previous attempt at remorse had been weak, and her actions in the courtroom did little to sway the judge's opinion. Rachel, your role in this crime, though you claim to be sorry, was as equally cold and calculated as Sheila's. For that, you are sentenced to 30 years in prison. But you will be eligible for parole in 2020. Skylar's mother broke down in tears. She had hoped for justice, but this felt like a slap in the face. How could they ever be truly free? How could anyone heal after something so devastating? While Skylar's story may have ended too soon, the lessons it left behind will change the lives of countless others. Thank you for staying with us through this gut-wrenching story. If you're as committed to justice as we are, hit subscribe, like, and comment your thoughts below. Share this video to spread the lessons of Skylar's story. And if you're hungry for more true crime stories like this one, don't miss out on our other videos. You won't believe what we've uncovered in our past investigations. Let's keep learning, and let's keep fighting for justice together. By understanding what happened to Skylar and seeing how things could have been prevented, you can take control of your own family's safety. Let's break it down into clear, actionable steps that could help protect your loved ones from harm. Lesson 5. Recognize emotional manipulation and isolation. The first step in protecting our children and loved ones is being able to spot signs of emotional manipulation. Sheila and Rachel didn't just physically harm Skylar, they emotionally isolated her first. They used subtle tactics like excluding her, making her feel small, and even controlling her actions. Parents need to be aware of these dynamics. Is your child constantly hanging out with the same group of friends who treat them poorly? Do they often come home anxious, drained, or upset after spending time with certain people? These are signs that manipulation may be occurring. The sooner you can recognize these patterns, the sooner you can step in and offer support. Lesson 4. The importance of healthy friendships. No friendship should make you feel worse about yourself. Skylar's situation spiraled out of control because she ignored the growing signs of toxicity in her friendship with Sheila and Rachel. Encourage your children to be around people who lift them up, not tear them down. Teach them about the importance of having boundaries and respecting each other's space. Healthy relationships should never isolate a person, only build them up. When they are surrounded by positive influences, it becomes much harder for toxic relationships to take root. Lesson 3. Talk about trust and no. One of the most powerful lessons from this case is the importance of teaching our children that their no matters. Skylar initially didn't want to sneak out that night, but was pressured until she relented. It's essential that our children know that they have the right to say no at any time, and that saying no is an important form of self-respect. Establishing boundaries and respecting others' boundaries can be a life-saving tool in the modern world. The best way to empower your child is by ensuring they understand the power of their own voice. Lesson 2. Foster open communication. When Skylar's parents started noticing red flags, they didn't know how to act on them, and Skylar didn't feel she could communicate openly with them. This is why having open, judgment-free communication with your children is crucial. Let them know that they can talk to you about anything, no matter how small or insignificant it might seem. Establish a system where they feel comfortable coming to you with their concerns or worries. Lesson 1. Have a safety plan in place. Finally, one of the most important ways you can protect your child is by creating a bailout plan. A code word or phrase that says, "I'm in danger and I need help," is vital. Make sure your child knows that they can contact you at any time, and you'll pick them up, no questions asked. The key to this plan is not judging them for getting into a bad situation, but ensuring they always feel safe enough to ask for help. This simple measure can make the difference between life and death. So what should you do next? Start the conversation with your children today. Teach them how to recognize manipulation, set boundaries, and know when to say no. And always, always have a plan for their safety. Your child's safety depends on your awareness and your willingness to act when things don't feel right. Don't wait. Make sure your child is never alone in facing a situation they can't handle. Thank you for staying with us through Skylar's story. If you believe every child deserves to grow up in a safe environment and be protected from harm, then subscribe, like, and comment below. Share this video to make sure other parents know how to keep their children safe. Let's use this story as a tool to create awareness and help protect more children from falling victim to similar threats. And don't forget to watch our previous videos for more real-life lessons you can learn from. Together, we can make a difference.